Hello everybody and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Serge.
My name is James.
It's Monday. The game week is not finished.
No.
What?
I'm waiting.
No, there's nothing. We'll talk about the events of the weekend on the main podcast, which obviously this weekend was the Planet FPL Derby. The number of people that have asked for Tottenham to be published to everybody this week rather than just the patrons only is quite a few sliding into my DMs there. I see you. This week, though, obviously the game week's not finished yet. There's still a couple of games to go today. We've got Wolves, Leeds and Burnley. West Brom still playing tonight. And so the full review of the weekend will come tomorrow. But today we're gonna people's poll it up. And probably for the next few weeks, actually. Main pod Tuesdays, people's poll Mondays.
Definitely gives me an extra 24 hours to get over what happened yesterday.
and me to get over what happened yesterday as well. I'm still in shock.
Yeah, I think mentally we probably all need that, actually.
Yeah, but ultimately it's why you love football.
Yeah, do you know what? It's something
football.
I do want to talk about on Tottenham. I would, in a really roundabouts way, I'd absolutely rather feel how I felt at the end of the game yesterday than how I felt after the Everton game, where I just felt nothing.
Yeah.
Turn the TV off, go and do the washing up or something.
Sure.
So
I get it.
Emotional investment is better than no investment.
100%. So tell us, what were the options for the people's poll? And there were only two this week.
Yeah, I mean, quite straightforward, because last week I did the stupid thing on my Ask James stream on Friday 10 days ago by saying these are the three options, and then Project Big Picture dropped on the Sunday and I was like, shit. So we're going to look at Project Big Picture, and I asked everybody on Twitter to kind of, how do they want us to take this route? Do they want us to look at the positives that were in the document, because there are a few, or do they want us to hammer into the negatives? And it was kind of a bit of just a personal test of, do people want to hear good things or bad things?
Yep.
Positives. Let's talk positives of Project Big Picture. So it's worth saying, before we get into some of the positives that are into Project Big Picture, I hope I'm not just speaking for you, but we're both very fucking against it as a whole, because of the idea of the Big Six having majority ruling on football, essentially.
Or 9. Big Six plus 3.
6 plus 3 puppets.
Yeah.
Essentially.
But the strange thing being that from the Big Six, yourselves included and us included, are not for Project Big Picture. So puppets... Or I feel like they were trying to be brought along for the ride with promises.
That's all
something.
I mean. It's not even meant disrespectfully to yourselves, Southampton or Everton. My point is, it could have been Villa, Leeds, Newcastle. It doesn't matter who those three clubs are. Yeah. It's just to make sure that the Big Six aren't, which they would collude and vote together for whatever was beneficial for them, right? It would be a majority vote rather than 100% vote.
Yep.
That's all it is.
It's important. I think just around Project Big Picture, I don't think it's any surprise that the lead instigators in Manchester United and Liverpool both have American owners in Fenway Group and the Glazers.
Controversial.
Because it's because American sport generally doesn't have a lot of it doesn't have relegation and promotion. You're looking at the NFL and NBA and whatever. I mean, they have the playoffs and they have winners and losers, but they don't have relegation. And once you own a franchise, you own a franchise in the top tier of sport. So for them to be over here and see relegation as something, or relegation, promotion, and all of that kind of stuff that goes with it, is different to what they're used to with American sport. So I feel like the whole thing with Project Big Picture was a little bit more towards that American model of the elite 20 teams or 30 teams.
Then one of the positives of this document is money for the EFL clubs,
yeah.
right? It's probably, if not the biggest positive in it, is the idea that immediate money to go to the resource of helping to finance and save EFL clubs. There was some consideration in it. My aspect on it was always, it was short term to fucking get the hook of the EFL clubs, where they could change that long term and exactly what you said, not give a fuck about them in the longer term. But what we've obviously seen over the last 10 days or so, kind of pushed by Rick Parry, who's chairman of the EFL, and a lot of the EFL chairman, to be honest, in fairness as
chairman
well.
And a few others have piped up.
That many of them wanted this to go through. Essentially, there were only 14 clubs that didn't really.
Yeah, so...
Which are the 14 Premier League clubs outside the Big Six. So
I think there's a desperate need for the money. Now, explain something to me or the listeners. The promise was 250 million as a bailout right here, right now, that gets everyone out of the shit. And then there was another 100 million going to the FA to distribute into other areas of football, whether it's women's football or non-league or whatever. That 350 million comes from the Premier League clubs.
Correct.
Or from the Premier League. It's pretty much the same thing, right?
Premier League.
For example, of that 350 million, would Manchester United contribute more than West Ham or West Brom or anyone else? Or would it be equal to everybody?
In a roundabout way, the bigger clubs would actually be distributing a bit more, but it wouldn't go to them and then go down. It would go straight from the Premier League. The idea behind this essentially is the Premier League obviously generates a large volume of revenue, most of it through commercialism, oversized television rights, domestic television rights.
Yep.
And how that gets paid to the clubs, let's take the domestic TV rights as an example. Whatever they're sold for, it's generally split across the 20 clubs, but for example, Manchester United will get probably 20 million more than, say, Burnley, because they'll be on the TV 15 more times, for example.
Yeah. So they would take the money out of this, and then whatever's left is what would be distributed as opposed to the total amount.
So the way it works is 100% of overseas television rights is split between the 20 clubs.
Right.
It's only the domestic television money and obviously prize money in terms of merit of where you finish in the league table is what separates. So that money, obviously, in the first instance, is generated into the Premier League rather than it all just going to Premier League clubs. They're saying distributing money down to the EFL. Yep. Make sense?
Yep. And it's interesting. Like Tottenham, I would consider as a wealthier club than West Ham overall, but also in the current climate, you've got a stadium with a shitload of debt, and we're renting ours for a pocket change. In the current climate with no money coming in, we're in a better financial situation than you are. So then how do you figure out who puts their hand in their pocket for more or less? That was one of the things in my mind that was interesting to think about. It is a positive. If more money is going down to the lower league clubs, we have to say that it's a positive of Project Big Picture. Devil's always in the detail and how long it will last.
Yes, but it was obviously an immediate bailout. The idea was £250 million to go to EFL clubs, an extra 100 million, as you alluded to go to the FA, of which 55 million was going to be to cover operational costs, obviously losses on COVID, etc. 25 million for non-league. By the way, the National Lottery has given 100 million grant to non-league football last week, which is absolutely massive. 10 million for Women's Super League and the Women's Championship, and 10 million to go into grassroots football. So not only was it 100 million to go to FA, they were always kind of dictating on this where it was going to get spent. I don't know if the FA, how much of a role the FA would have had into these talks. That is possible. There's a lot that goes on in the FA that I don't particularly agree with, but now's not particularly the time for that. The other thing was in terms of future ongoing, and it's worth saying again that they could have voted to change this at any point, the Big Six, right? But 25% of Premier League annual revenue, up from 4%, would go to EFL clubs, and the scrapping of the parachute payments. Now, the parachute payments are obviously quite controversial because, in theory, one of the ideas is if you're in the Championship, you chase the dream, you get in the Premier League. If it doesn't work, you've then got the insurance of the parachute payments to cover you when you come back down. In theory, should then
allows
make
people
it
to yo-yo a little
easier
bit.
To come back up. It doesn't always work. A good example would be that Hull City, between 2014 and 2018, they were relegated twice. And they received over 100 million in parachute payments. Hull City are now in League One. What would Hull City have been without those parachute payments?
Bust.
Well,
potentially.
There you go. So that kind of thing would need managing very, very carefully. But obviously part of the removing of the parachute payments is that more money would get funded into that league. In theory, it should make the championship, for example, a more even playing field, actually. So that if someone did come into League One, they would, like a Coventry now, they would be more likely to go and push on again, for example. Some of these numbers are quite interesting in terms of solidarity payments that were made in 2018-19. I just want to highlight some of these numbers. So in the championship, 4.65 million was paid to each championship club as a solidarity payment from the Premier League. Down in League One, that's £700,000 per club. And in League Two, it's £470,000 per club. Now times that by 4. Is my maths right there? It's more than that, isn't it?
It's times by 5 and a bit.
6 and a quarter.
Yep.
That's a big jump, isn't it? And that's part of the removing of the parachute payment, is the idea that we're just giving these clubs more money in the first instance.
I'm a sceptical bastard here. And when I see that, I feel like all I'm thinking with my business head on is part of the Project Big Picture was about clubs having the ability to negotiate TV deals on their own.
We said we didn't talk negatives now.
No, we wouldn't, but you've got to put it into some context, which means that if clubs are negotiating their own TV deals on the side, then the overall Premier League revenue will come down massively because everyone will be getting their own money. So,
wow, aren't you a clever cookie? Nailed it in one,
half
mate.
Or quarter? Like if the revenue for the Premier League halves or drops down by a quarter, then suddenly it's the same difference because they're picking the money up themselves, and that doesn't count.
Yes,
so,
devil in the detail. That
loopholes,
if they sold the television rights themselves, which I mentioned, obviously, where does a lot of the money come into the Premier League? Overseas domestic television rights is the main source of income, right? If the clubs are then making that income themselves, the Premier League is making less money to distribute down to the Championship. So it all looks good in black and white. We said we'd do the positives.
Well, just putting it into some context. Talk about some other positives then. What else do we think could be a positive from this?
So one of the things, obviously, is from a fan perspective. There was a couple of actually really nice things in here that fans, match-going fans, would really appreciate. So the idea is subsidised Premier League away travel is one of them. So I know clubs have been in talks for a long time, and obviously this doesn't matter at this moment in time. But the idea of getting subsidised train fares, one of many frustrations for fans has been the idea that basically once the train companies clock on that you need to travel somewhere, they fuck up the prices, right?
Yeah.
It's the same with...
When you travel regularly, you'll know, does it happen? Must happen.
Yeah, 100%.
I actually know even... from conversations we've had, that as soon as there's a game and you know you want to go and it's finalised, the first thing you do before you even worry about your tickets is worry about the train. Yeah.
Yeah, if I know 98% that I'm going to get a match ticket, I'll just go and get the trains done.
Train first.
There's no waiting. I'll give you a good example. I went to Hull last game of the season in 2016-17, and we didn't know if we was going to get a ticket, because at the time of applying for the tickets, technically we still had a chance to win the league. So I knew everybody was going to want to go. So we couldn't book the trains till we knew we had a ticket. It's a long fuck off way, right? Let's be honest. And they weren't cheap anyway. So ended up paying like over £100 return and had to stand up on the way back. It wasn't even for a fucking seat, right?
Wow.
So one of the things that the clubs, and I think there's plenty of MPs, etc., trying to get this pushed through for fans as well, is the idea that if you buy a ticket, if the game gets moved, you can still use the ticket.
Train tickets.
So quite often in a lot of these, you are literally booked into having to have the train that you're booked for. If the game then gets moved to a Sunday from a Saturday, it's like, Jesus. So in theory, with that practice, I could, for example, if I'd known in January that year that I was going to go to Hull on the last day of the season, I could have booked that train ticket in January, right?
Yeah.
Knowing if it was Saturday, this last day of the season, it wouldn't have mattered. But I think you get the principle of what I'm trying to say. So clubs want to get involved in that. I know obviously through Spurs there have been certain initiatives where Spurs have put on their own trains. I went to a night game at Leicester a few years ago. It was £20 return. No beer on the train, but then how else was I going to get there? £20 is reasonable for a return train ticket. Can't argue
I think
that.
that's very good.
Spurs have certainly put on plenty of coaches. I went up to Newcastle on a midweek night about 5-6 years ago, and the coach was free.
Okay.
next time I'd pay for the fucking train. Fucking leaving Tottenham at 11 o'clock in the morning and getting back at 4 o'clock the next morning. I'd rather do the hotel and trains, thank you.
Yeah.
But it was free, so I went and did it. Another idea
and they're capping the ticket price as well.
Yeah, correct. So currently, and I believe it was due to expire at the end of this season. I don't think there's any danger to this, but the capping of £30 Premier League tickets for away fans. But what obviously a lot of the fans have been arguing for a long time is 20 is plenty. That's the slogan you might have heard a number of times.
Yeah.
And the idea in this document is, yes, £20 for away fans. We're trying to give something back to the game. In the Premier League, and it seems farcical to even say this at the moment, but the importance of away fans at Premier League games when we do have crowds there is part of the spectacle. It's part of the importance of the game.
Massively.
An atmosphere at a football ground just is not the same if you play, with respect, a lower end Premier League team who can only take 500 away fans on a Wednesday night because of cost, ticket, train, hotel, all those sort of things. And one of the other ideas is that for a minimum of 8% capacity to be given to away fans. Now, currently, the big clubs only have to give 3,000 away allocation, irrespective of as long as you're over 30%.
Yep.
They don't have to give any more than 3,000. If you're under 30,000 capacity, I think it's 10% you have to give. So at somewhere where it's 24,000 capacity, you should get 2,400 tickets. But obviously the 8% would mean, for example, every time Tottenham play a home game, if my maths is right, 4,800 away fans.
Yep.
That's nice. That feels like a cup game.
Cup. What is the FA Cup rule at the moment on percentages? Because it's higher in the FA Cup, isn't it?
FA Cup, I think, has to be 10%, irrespective. It might even be 15%.
Wow.
I think. But commonly, I mean, like when we went to Southampton in the fourth round, they give us the whole end. So you normally get 3,000 in the league. So I think it was 5,000 in the cup, I think. And the more away fans at Premier League games, the better atmospheres will be.
Oh, yeah.
Because it brings the best out of home crowds as well, right?
Course, yeah.
You think, look at these 5,000 fucking ears singing, and we better have a go as well. It does become like that.
Massively.
So the more away fans at games, better. Also, from a selfish standpoint, where I'm probably in a position where a lot of games now, I'm now going to struggle to get an away ticket for. The bigger ones, I mean, if I'm getting 5,000, 6,000 tickets at Old Trafford, if I want to go,
you can go.
I'll go. It won't be a problem. So there's some stuff in there for fans, and I feel like this was part of the grasp here. And that, fans are going to like that.
It begs the question again, being
why I'm paying about
advocate.
£70 a ticket for a home ticket. Yeah, but then
it's true. We don't need Project Big Picture for this to happen anyway. It feels like a proposal that's good in any circumstance. So it's something that the Supporters Trust should be pushing for anyway. And it's like,
they are, in fairness. It was really nice to see off the back of this that all the Big Six Supporters Trust put out a joint statement together.
Yeah, of course.
That genuinely, even the Tottenham and Arsenal Supporters Trust, City, United, Spirit Shankly, Liverpool, they genuinely do all work together for the benefit of football fans. And I think this is where, oddly enough, you get the opposite of the Big Six idea, because the Big Six supporters clubs don't want this, right, in terms of this Project Big Restart. They don't themselves, even though it would probably benefit their own clubs, they're all about understanding that we need that Leicester City chance of a possibility to happen, that in this freak of a football season we're currently watching, possibility might come up again, right?
Yeah.
And it can't be a closed shop. Someone put it really well the other day, the idea that obviously, say, Manchester City and Chelsea are now part of the Big Six. Let's be honest, they got there because of investment, right? If they weren't allowed that investment, they wouldn't be part of the Big Six.
Yep.
It would potentially be a Big Four at the moment, or a Big Five with an Everton or a Leeds or something different, right? And it's the same case. Ask a Newcastle fan at the moment, right? They want to be allowed to have that investment in their football club. I'm sure the likes of Villa, Leeds, Wolves, Everton, they all feel similar, right? Don't close that shop on us. And it shouldn't be, right? Look at how exciting our league is at the moment.
Yeah.
Every single game at the moment, you're like, fucking hell, the big boy might get beat here.
Yeah.
We want to close that idea? I mean, we can't, right? So the Supporters Trust are in full support of keeping everything fair and open, and all 20 clubs have an equal voice in terms of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, no doubt.
The supporters trusts are trying to look after everybody, not just their own.
Yeah. And in terms of other kind of positives that come from Project Restart, they are looking at other football. I mean, we're talking about the Women's League as well.
I don't know if this is a positive or negative, and I've tried to do some research on it this morning. It's difficult to find opinions. So the idea is that the Women's League will have its own independent body separate from the Football Association, set up to themselves. And that depends where you look at it. The one idea is if you've got a governing body that's just for women's football, every decision made will benefit women's football.
True.
The scary bit is if it's then cut off, will it get the investment of Premier League clubs? One interesting aspect, you mentioned obviously Liverpool and United highly behind this idea, right? Manchester United until very recently didn't even have a women's team. They hid behind it completely. And Liverpool actually kind of knocked Arsenal off their perch in women's football around 2013, 2014, and have just let it completely drop off now and have basically withdrawn the majority of investment to that women's team.
Yep.
So, you kind of are like...
Are they trying to brush it off and make it someone else's problem almost?
I don't know. So I've found it really difficult this morning to try and identify if people, and I'm certainly no expert on it, to understand if people are behind the idea of, and it's probably something we want to investigate further, whether people in women's football want to be independent of it, or do they need the help of the clubs? Do a Tottenham Hotspur ladies team buy Alex Morgan if it's not part financed by the men's team? Surely that connection has to stay there in some way, right? Or otherwise it doesn't become Tottenham Hotspur ladies.
Then
I don't know.
Almost at a club level as opposed to at a governing body level. I think this is more about a governing body level. I think they'll be able to do their own independent deals on sponsorship, or I'm sure they already are doing them, and that kind of thing. I mean, getting Alex Morgan didn't help at the weekend particularly. But
She ain't played yet. She ain't fit.
But I don't know who the Arsenal girl is that's just banging in goals.
I forget her name. She's like hat-trick every week at the moment.
51 goals in 50 games. Christ,
the
play
Erling
up front for our men's team.
Erling Haaland of ladies football.
Yeah, incredible. But I think overall, the women's game is getting more exposure bit by bit. It's going to take a long time. That's the only thing. I'm with you. I'm not sure whether or not having an independent governing body would be a positive or a negative. I think it'd be better off under the FA, but that's a gut instinct kind of.
I think the idea behind that is the FA's obviously got a lot of its own duties to deal with, be it sponsorship, cup competitions, grassroots football. I think the idea in principle is good that there's a body that constantly just focuses on women's football. We know there's this group which Gary Neville's a part of, this idea of kind of reforming football, which the idea of getting heads, supporters clubs, football clubs, women's, grassroots, non-league, all of that, everybody round the table and saying, okay, what kind of manifesto can we work under that benefits everybody in their own way? The idea, women's football is, unfortunately, it's an afterthought for a lot of people, right? It's not the FA's priority. The FA may want to make it a priority, but so's grassroots football, so's the England national team, right? Unfortunately, they've got to split into several different ways. If you've got an independent body that just focuses on that, I would have thought, generally speaking, that it would be a positive. My concern would be that withdrawal of funding and stuff. Women's football generally, I'm no expert on it. I don't watch a lot of it, but I watched a highlights show on a Sunday night a couple of weeks ago. And I did think, fucking hell. And the reason I thought that was one game finished 7-1 and one game finished 9-0. And you think, oh, wow, even in the Premier League, there is a huge disparity. I think it was a 4-0 and a 5-1 that weekend as well, out of 6 fixtures. And you're thinking, okay, so we've basically got...
It's La Liga.
Well, it's not even that. You've basically got 4 or 5 really good teams and the other 7 are a long way off.
Yeah.
So somehow they need to find that balance in the Women's Premier League to level that gap a little bit, yeah.
What else is in the proposal, James, that you got down as positives? There's a few other bits and pieces we talked about.
The other thing was, and this would benefit the Big Six in theory, is the plan to put a greater emphasis on merit for position. And one of the reasons I think that's very important is we get the sort of Crystal Palace Everton restart period. We're like, fucking hell, these guys ain't motivated here, are they?
Yeah, true.
And in terms of, we'll get that
beach clubs
a little bit. Yeah, you know, if there's a lot more money between 12th and 8th, that might be something that's inspiring. If you can then motivate players to go, there's an extra fucking £100,000 for you there or something if you finish in X position. So I think that's potentially a good thing.
Yeah, I do.
Footballing calendar will also be organised with the focus of avoiding fixture pile-ups and to help the England national team. What do you think on the idea of 18 teams? I think most are against.
I'm against.
I think I am as well.
I'd rather have my 19 home games a season. 17 home games is a little like losing 2 home games. I'm not sure if I'm up for it.
And cancelling of the EFL Cup.
Against. I don't mind if the teams that are in European competition opt out, but I think for the rest of us, leave it. And I think it would be good to have a European spot in there. It'd rotate the teams that are getting into Europe.
That's exactly how I feel about it. I think, we're probably at the stage now with the EFL Cup. You go, okay, fine. Pull the clubs who are in Europe out of it. And yes, still have the carrot. It gives everybody else other than Man City's reserves a chance of winning a competition.
Sure.
And yes, have a European spot still available for it, even if it is that second qualifying spot, to give someone else a chance of getting into Europe, right? Again, making sure we haven't got that closed shop.
No, I think that would be good.
At the moment, it feels harder for clubs outside of European spots to win the League Cup than the FA Cup in an odd way, because the FA Cup, in terms of its conclusion, comes around at a time when these clubs are fighting for major trophies or potentially still in Europe. Whereas the League Cup, look at the final stages this year: quarter-final, semi-final, final, in between Champions League group stages and Champions League knockouts.
Yeah.
So other than the final. So even then you think, well, go for it. There's no European football, might as well. So
there's only 3 games left now.
And you've seen again, like the last 8 this year is quite strong again, right? They also get a bye, the extra round to go through because of being involved in European competition. So the European clubs instantly, when they enter, become basically 25% of what's left, near enough, not far off. 20% is probably more accurate. So I think in terms of League Cup, I think if you're in Europe, out. If you're not, let's keep the cup going.
Yep.
It's also really important for the lower league clubs that they have the potential of the TV revenue they can get from drawing a Newcastle or an Everton or a Leeds or whomever being on the TV, perhaps having that away game when crowds go back. We've seen the likes of Burton Albion were in the semi-final the other year.
They did get battered.
Only 9-0. But it's still important for these clubs to have their day, right? We shouldn't take that away. I don't like the idea that suddenly, basically, for everybody outside of 4 or 5 clubs, there's only one trophy you can win. I think let's keep it at 2.
2. Agree with you on that.
I think so. Community Shields.
It's one game. I don't know why they want to scrap it.
The thing is, the Community Shield was very much seen as a curtain raiser for the season. The idea that the Premier League champions played the FA Cup winners, and you have to remember when the Community Shield was formed, the idea generally was that winning the FA Cup was as big as winning the league. It was a big thing. Think about how the FA Cup final was treated on television.
Yeah.
You didn't really have league games that were live on the telly if you go back to 60s, 70s and stuff like that. So it was seen as the 2 champions, if you want, going and facing off. Quite often now, it just becomes first v second quite often.
Yeah,
we've seen,
true.
Obviously, Liverpool-Arsenal this year, but it was Liverpool-City the year before. It feels like there's the same teams in it quite a lot. Quite often it's northern teams as well don't want to be going down to fucking Wembley for another game, having done the FA Cup semi-final and final there as well.
True.
But I think the reason they want to scrap it is, and again, the dirty of this is in the detail, reducing the Premier League down to 18 clubs. One of the things in the detail is start the season later. Why do you think they want to start the season later?
Pre-season tours all around the world, or even their own version of, or wherever. We can all invent our own trophy. We'll be winning the Betway Cup, you'll be winning the Audi Cup, and everyone else can have their pick of the Morrison's Cup and the fucking anything else you want. They want to commercialise and actually these pre-season foreign tours are quite lucrative, whether it be Asia or America.
And what money do the clubs get out of the FA Community Shield?
Nothing.
There's your answer. So, yes. Why spend 2 or 3 weeks in America when we can spend 5 weeks there and make even more money and play East Coast, West Coast, all that kind of shit. Play each other out there. Barcelona v Real Madrid in America. We've seen it, right? So, yeah. Not every positive here is a positive spin. I think most of us can see through a lot of it. And we've just spent, how long we've been talking for, Serge?
Half hour or so.
Half hour. We've talked about the positives, and whether we liked it or not, we put a negative slant on all of them. We couldn't help it. And Serge just got up and gone, shit, I bet the video's run out on the video camera.
Yeah, we probably lost 20 seconds or 30 seconds there. 20 or 30 seconds.
So we still ended up with the idea of coming and going, yep, positives, positives, positives. We couldn't help but put negative slants on
You've got to put it into context, I would say, more than anything else. And we'll probably look at the negatives in a little bit more detail for our patrons and what have you as well.
The negatives. If we go really hard, we go really hard. Fortunately, it's worth saying, if you've been out of the loop, this is not happening. It's not going to go through. The 20 Premier League clubs, interestingly, unanimously voted against Project Big Picture last week at a meeting on Wednesday. Yes, even Liverpool and United voted unanimously against it. Who's trying to save face here exactly?
Yeah.
What, you put this forward and now you're unanimously voting against it?
They really were keen to just get the conversation started.
I think that's a lot of it as well. I think timing's interesting because they knew, because of what's happening, because of COVID and at lower league level, I think they knew that there would be a lot of draw for it, that a lot of people, oh yeah, save us, etc. So there's a lot in terms of the Premier League at the moment. The Premier League apparently offered 20 million to the EFL last week for something, which the EFL were like, fuck off, what's that? Thought we were getting 250 million. So it's like, feels like more bullying tactic. Okay, there, have a little something, but you're not having really this is what we're proposing. So we'll offer you something that you can't really have.
There we go. Regular listeners of the podcast, thank you again for tuning in to Planet FPL. Tomorrow we have a full rundown of all 10 fixtures from the weekend. There were some very good games and a lot of FPL chat to talk about from them.
Could be another fucking 2 hour.
On Wednesday, Sky Fantasy Football has been a very interesting week this week. A lot of high scores in Sky this week. So see how we got on. And obviously we'll be talking about the one and only VVD, who's now out for a little while. On Thursday, you've got Clash of the Correspondents. Ricky Saunders,
Jack Toner, Burnley v Tottenham, because I feel like this week you're going to need a different Tottenham opinion to mine. Yeah. Although it might not be different. I don't know. I
think the last thing you want to do this week is play another team in claret and blue, and they're really...
I'd rather play Burnley than Villa at the moment, but I think we'll talk about that tomorrow. Big game for Burnley tonight, because lose it and then just looking up, aren't they? I think they're going to the game bottom today, tonight.
Are they on 0 points?
I think so, yeah.
Wow. On Friday, James will be coming at you with a live stream answering all your questions that you ask.
It's going to be in the morning.
Just so you know.
Because deadline stream is going to be at 5:30, right?
Yes, we've got Friday night
2 streams Friday.
Tomorrow for the patrons, don't forget Tot and Ham. If you haven't seen what happened yesterday, you do need to remind yourselves. Today we've got patron Q&A for those as well. We'll be looking at potentially the negatives on the Project Big Picture on Wednesday for these guys. On Thursday is a quiz, and then Friday the differential show as we reveal and release our teams, which basically involves me buying Harry Kane. There we go. Other than that, ladies and gents, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe wherever you are. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.